Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is Mark Brody back here with my next episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And today, oh man, this is going to be a good episode because I'm chatting with Frank Mendoza. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI and in that space a little bit. I know it's top of everybody's mind, but Frank, thank you very much for being a guest on this episode. And can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself? What are you up to these days?
Yeah. Hey, Mark, thank you so much. It's absolutely pleasure to be here today, talk to your audience. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of talk about my favorite subject, which is about AI and machine learning and data science and all those types of buzzy words that are going on right now.
Yes.
Um, what I'm doing is I'm helping organizations, right? So over the last 8 years via Catalytics, my business, I'm helping consumer brands like Keurig, like Dr. Pepper, Kellogg's, Beam Suntory, to execute actionable AI strategies to grow
Okay.
their top line revenue by tens of millions of dollars. And, doing that through various means, but really with a focus on making sure that those activities, those opportunities are aligned to their business objectives. So really having a great time right now. And certainly with the introduction of some of these generative AI solutions like ChatGPT, there's
Mhm.
certainly a lot of interest going on with the space.
Now you're busy. You've been around for a few years. How long has Catalytics been around?
Yeah, we started in 2015,
Okay.
and so we were kind of playing in this space certainly before this hype cycle. But there's been a
Mhm.
continuous hype cycle around AI for the last few years, but it's been mainly focused on what's considered discriminative AI, which is really trying to make predictions around, if you will, numbers, right? So predicting,
Mhm.
for example, sales revenue or optimizing inventory using forecasting models, things like that.
Okay.
That's kind of where the focus had been on for the last few years,
Okay.
but certainly last November with the introduction of ChatGPT by OpenAI, people started to see the real value of these generative solutions, and it's a new hockey stick, if you will, with regards to hype around this stuff.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, every conversation, we seem to get into these days is, oh, what are you doing with AI? It's like, and then you go to the conferences and, everybody and their brother has something about AI
Mhm.
or Chat GPT, not endorsing Chat GPT or anything like that or any specific product,
Yeah.
but they have it on their booth as part of their hey, come over and talk to us type of thing. And it's been wild to watch over the last year or so. How
For
that's
sure.
definitely want to get into AI and digital agent and digital engagement with you here. But before we get started, I'd love to get your take on this. And it's something that I ask all of my guests, and it's kind of like a setting a foundation, so to speak. But you've had a very successful career. Your company's been in business. You've had your company for eight plus years. Um, I'm particularly interested in learning your thoughts about this. At this stage in my career, if I could, I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self,
Mm.
we'll say X, whatever it is. Um, and how would that have changed the trajectory or the journey that you may have had on your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's certainly a lot of lessons, a lot of experiences.
Hmm.
But here recently, Mark, I've started studying Stoicism a little bit. And
Okay.
one of the pillars of Stoicism is really this thing called the dichotomy of control, which
Okay.
basically equates to when you're in a certain situation or a circumstance, understand what's in your control and understand what's outside of your control, and then
Hmm.
focus your attention on the things that are just inside your control and let everything else go, right? Because it's not
Yes.
in your control.
Hmm.
And I think for me, that has been kind of a nice lesson that
Hmm.
I wish I would have known or, practiced a lot earlier in my career. I think it would have offered me a lot better sleep, a lot less sleepless nights, if you will, around certain
Yes.
things, allowed me to really focus on the things that did control. And you know, at the end of the day, giving me a little bit more peace of mind in my younger years, if you will.
It's interesting when my older sons were younger. I used to tell them all the time, control what you can control, you know. And I didn't even realize it was more of a philosophy, or a teaching. It
And
was
it is,
just,
you know, to some it's like it's common sense, right? But
yeah.
you know, we all tend to focus on things that are outside of our control, and
Hmm.
it's a daily practice
Yep.
to always be on the lookout, saying, you know, asking yourself that question, which is this in my control? If it is, then do something about it. If it's not,
Yes,
then you know, allow the things that are going to happen, right? And
exactly. And it's hard to especially if you're a controlling person, it's hard to allow yourself to do those things. Or if you're responsible for a lot of things and you just want to see them executed in the way that you want them executed, it's really, really hard. So even as a leadership philosophy, it's hard for people to do that, especially when you get up into some really senior levels within organizations as
yeah,
well.
and I think it's really, again, asking yourself, you know, have you put the team in place that you need to delegate the responsibility that's in front of
Yes.
you? Because at the end of the day, that's what you have in control over, right? Putting the
Yep.
people in place, right? And
Yep.
guiding them and mentoring them and leading them. But once they
Yes.
are in place, okay, now those things are, you know, you could hand things over to them and trust that things are going to happen and focus on other things.
I love that. I love that. And I love seeing that in practice when we talk to different companies and seeing how that looks within different organizations. It's awesome. It's a good segue because there's a lot of, as we've talked about over the last year or so, AI has taken center stage.
Yeah.
Um, Before that, it was like everybody was talking about CX.
Yeah.
And now there's like, in my opinion, there's a conflation between CX strategies and AI strategies.
Mm.
Are you seeing some of that in your conversations, or what do you really see as the difference between CX strategy and AI strategy? Can they be merged, or do they really
Yeah,
need to be kept separate?
I certainly view them and try and encourage people to look at it as complementary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, um, you know, are there AI strategies that you can do that aren't directly aligned to CX? Yes, right. You can have logistics and what we talked about, forecasting models and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, some of the stronger organizations are certainly taking the approach that by introducing AI strategies and to complement my CX
Mm-hmm.
strategies, we're going to be set up for success longer term. And some of
Yeah.
these generative AI solutions are really set up for to help you set up for success around these things, right? So think about, you know, even, and again, I'm tool agnostic. So whether it be Google
Yeah.
Bard or Chat GPT, these generative text generators have an amazing opportunity to create some personalization for organizations, right? So
Mm-hmm.
offer their customers personalized messages, personalized images, you know, all those types of things that are going to lead to a more potentially a more loyal customer base at the end of the day.
I love that. What are you, as you start working with an organization, um obviously one of the first things you probably do is go in and do an assessment, for them, and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is where you need to focus, this is where you need to not try and control what you can't control. And what are you seeing as the top gap organizations are, you know
Mhm.
have when it comes to their AI strategy, in
Sure,
general?
sure. Yeah, so you know, when I'm having conversations, and as you can imagine, I have had quite a few conversations, 100 plus
Yep.
people over the last several months. There's two aspects, right? So one is those folks who are a little bit hesitant to dive in, right?
Yep.
And I think that's completely understandable to some extent, right? So there is a piece of uncertainty, the fear
Mm-hmm.
of the unknown,
Yep.
and a little bit of analysis paralysis because daily we're all seeing a bombardment of new applications and new, plugins and whatnot be introduced. And there's a lot of organizations who are just like, I'm not sure where to dip my toe in. And
Yep.
so trying to figure out kind of where they are. So that's a huge gap right now in terms of helping them. And what we tend to do is we help them identify what is your business objective. And so even before you do an assessment, Mark, like you mentioned, you really want to understand what is the business objectives and goals that they're trying to align to, and then
Hmm.
figure out whether or not AI has an opportunity to complement that.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a lot of instances, AI can play a role in achieving those objectives and goals.
Hmm.
But in some cases, based on their maturity of where they are in their organization, things like dashboards and visualizations and those types of aspects may be what they need in order to make better data-driven decisions. So that's one aspect, is really understanding what the goals of the organization are, and then identifying use cases, prioritizing those use cases, and then building a business case to ensure that you're going to see the ROI and it's going to be aligned to your business objective. The second group of folks are those who have started to dip their toe in AI, whether that be generative AI or more what I would consider traditional or discriminative AI, which is again trying to predict something.
Hmm.
Um, what I'm finding is there's somewhat a lack of intentionality. And again, what I mean by that is I want to use it, I want to apply it, but is this the best use case for my organization? Is this the one
Okay.
that's going to give me the biggest bang for the buck? That's going to allow me to demonstrate the value to the organization, and at the end of the day, build a case for us to
Hmm.
continue our investment in this space, right?
Okay.
And so those are kind of the two challenges that people are facing: is the fear and unknown and uncertainty, and then
Hmm.
a little bit of lack of intentionality. I'm purchasing some technology, and the technology alone will solve my problems, as opposed to taking a more intentional approach and saying, I have this problem, can this technology help me in that problem? Does that make
You
sense?
know, it does. It does. And it actually, as you were talking there,
Mm-hmm.
um, one of the things that popped into my head, and I have things, purple squirrels and whatever, pop into my
Yeah.
head all the time. But one of the things that popped in there was, and I'm kind of guilty of this, AI is a all-consuming bucket.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's, you have different flavors of what AI can do, different
Correct.
categorizations of artificial intelligence, AI,
Yeah,
generative
the way I like
learning.
to describe that, Mark, right, is AI, think of it like physics, or think of it like
Yep.
chemistry or math, right? It's
Hmm.
a discipline, right? There are
Yeah.
so many aspects to AI. And the reality is that can be, like we talked about, a machine learning model that predicts customer churn. It could be a deep learning model that measures sentiment analysis on
Hmm.
language and audio. It could be a generative image generator, right?
Yes.
So there's so many aspects of AI that, like we discussed before, there's no one
Hmm.
person who's like, I'm an AI expert on all of it, right? There's just no
Yes.
such thing. But what we can do is identify and have guidance from people who understand those different elements of AI and say,
Hmm.
where are my problems and what are the best use cases that I should use AI for? In
Yes.
some instances, that's going to be, you know, um, in the marketing space, maybe it help with content generation,
Hmm.
marketing messages, and in the contact center space, it may help with using virtual experts, right? So
Yep.
taking things like uh, a handbook or something, feeding that into an AI, and then allowing your CSRs to be able to, question and ask, aspects of that handbook,
Hmm.
um, and get the correct response at the right time, to address the right issues at the. So there's different aspects, but it really is boiled down to, are you going after the things that are the right business case or right objectives for your business?
I love that. Thank you for going through that, because I like I said, I think people are putting looking at AI the wrong way.
Mm.
In some cases, they're looking at it like this all-encompassing thing, and I like the way you broke it down into like the different disciplines and categorizations that AI can fall into. And it's like anytime someone wants to start a business, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
You know, why is that, and why are you starting a business? And so, why do you want to bring AI into your environment? Okay, what problem is it? The same type of thought process. So I
Totally,
love
totally. And I
that.
think those are exactly the right questions that need to be asked. Not just should we use AI, but
Yep.
where should we use AI? And
Hmm.
why should we use it there? Right.
Yep.
And because those are the questions that I think are going to lead to long-term success, as
Hmm.
opposed to just the question of should we use AI? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Then let's just go grab ChatGPT and implement it into our organization. I think there's a lot of people, and I'm one of them, right? Encourage you to go experiment. Go experiment with
Hmm.
these. Don't put your head in the sand and pretend it's going to go away, because it's not.
Yes.
But experiment with intentionality is what I would
Hmm.
like to promote, right? So don't just go experiment, but make sure that it's the right use case for your organization, and you have some, if you will, success criteria to measure whether or not that investment was worth it and whether additional investment needs to be made going forward.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. And that's something we definitely want to highlight with all of our viewers today. Be intentional, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
Um, so, um, how do you see? And we've kind of touched on this
Mhm.
a little bit on, if you have your crystal ball,
Mhm.
how do you see AI strategies fitting into organizations' ecosystem over the next couple of years? Obviously, if they're intentional about it, but how do you see it playing in, especially I would say in the contact center world?
Yeah, I think it's going to be part of our daily lives. It already
Hmm.
is to some extent, but ever more so, and especially in the enterprise and the business space, right? So the
Hmm.
introduction, Microsoft's going to be incorporating their Copilot across all of their productivity apps. So you're going to have
Yeah.
a chat Copilot in your Excel. You're going to have it in your
Okay.
PowerPoint. So it's going to be a nebulous. It's going to be a all-encompassing part of our daily lives. I think
Mm.
the focus, though, is going to be how you decide to use that, right? Are you
Yep.
using it to augment your existing expertise and your, subject matter expertise, or are you going to take it and just copy, paste, publish, right? And I think
Yep.
the people who, again, use it with intentionality, use it
Hmm.
to augment their current expertise, their, what, if you will, competitive advantage, are going to be
Yep.
those who are set up for success long term. And so, no one calls themselves an internet company anymore, right? It's de facto you're an internet, right, company.
Yeah.
Similarly, the next couple of years, there's no one going to be an AI company anymore. Your AI is either built in or not, and that's going to be
Hmm.
where organizations, like you said, like contact centers, it's just going to be part of the daily lives. But how
Hmm.
it's implemented, where it's implemented, how do you measure the effectiveness of how it's been implemented? Those are the questions that are going to determine whether or not, you know, really you're building it into a competitive advantage. And the last thing I'd like to say, right, is technology itself
Uh-huh.
cannot be a competitive advantage if it's available to everyone, right? And
Yep.
so these technologies are now going to be starting to be available to everyone, right?
Yes.
And so the technology itself, in of it itself, is not going to be a competitive advantage, but how you take advantage of it, how you leverage it, how you implement it into your organization can be a competitive advantage.
It as you're going through the Microsoft Copilot,
Mhm.
I'm going to date myself here. I have the visualization of the paperclip
The
that was
Clippy
supposed to
or
be your,
Clipper,
yeah,
yeah, whatever.
that was supposed to help you, when you got stuck in
Yeah,
in a Microsoft application and whatnot, way back in the day. And now, you can actually talk to the paperclip, and the paperclip can pick up on what you're trying to accomplish, based on that. So,
yeah. It's definitely a paradigm shift, right,
yep.
Mark? I think before we would be inventing with tools.
Hmm.
Now, whether that be Grammarly or you spell check, we were
Yeah.
inventing with tools, right? And now I think with these generative AI solutions, what you have is tools inventing now, right?
Hmm.
So they can, there's tools right now you can invent that will develop an entire PowerPoint presentation for you, that will
Yeah.
generate, like we talked about, images before, and
Hmm.
things like that. So it really is a paradigm shift from inventing with tools to tools inventing.
Yeah.
And but it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're leveraging those tools in the right way.
Do you see, and I know this is kind of, veering down a rabbit hole here for a second. Um, do you see that an organization's competitive advantage, it, may lay in how they identify um nefarious AI,
Yes. Yeah,
versus.
so I've started to develop a framework where, there's two things to consider when identifying potential use cases for generative AI in your
Yeah.
organization. One of those is to take into consideration is how much human creativity is required for this specific task or function. If there's a lot of human creativity that needs to be novel, you're taking different, think maybe a new product development. You're
Hmm.
thinking maybe your brand, your logo, a lot of human creativity. You don't want necessarily your competitors or someone to be able to take advantage. Think of it that as one consideration. The second is how much of a competitive advantage is that task or function within your organization. So how
Hmm.
much would you not like your competitors to be able to mimic you,
Yeah.
right? So if it's high creativity, high human creativity,
Hmm.
and it's a very, if you will, high competitive advantage to your organization, I
Hmm.
say that those are not opportunities to delegate to an AI,
Yeah.
right? But if it's low competitive advantage, if it's low human creativity, think, maybe email or, a website FAQ, for example.
Hmm.
Those are great opportunities to look at maybe a generative AI solution, right?
Yeah.
The other two is when it's high competitive advantage, but maybe low creativity. That's an opportunity to augment with AI, right?
Hmm.
So still a competitive advantage, but maybe and maybe contact center world, right? Your CSRs, you can supply them with additional AI assistance so
Yeah.
that they can, position upsell opportunities or more tailored, personalized upsell opportunities to their clients. Those
Hmm.
are where you want to augment with AI.
Yeah.
And then when you have the other situation, which is low competitive advantage but high human creativity, that's another opportunity to augment with AI. But that might be an opportunity also to outsource or partner with someone who's already doing that in that space. So
Makes
a little bit of
sense.
a framework there for you to think about potential use
Yeah.
cases for generative AI, just from the two aspects of how much human creativity is necessary and how much of a
Hmm.
competitive advantage is this for your organization.
From a security standpoint, um, how how are organizations or how do you see organizations combating, like, for instance, I was reading an article not too long ago about voice biometrics,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the basically warning organizations about the ability with advanced AI to replicate voice biometrics in a very short period of time. Um, not saying that the technology is bad for voice biometrics, but cautioning. Do you see a role for AI to land in the security space as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the reality is, again, AI is a tool, just like any
Yeah.
other. There could be
Hmm.
nefarious actors leveraging
Yep.
that tool. I
Hmm.
think where you have to, can AI play a role? Absolutely. I think AI can
Yep.
play a role. What that role is, I think, is still yet to be determined, to be
Yeah.
real honest with you, right? I think there are a lot of instances, I think, where AI can certainly be used or misused, right?
Hmm.
And so, voice biometrics is one example. You've heard these countless stories about people calling, and being able to mimic their voice, and it's amazing technology, But I will, caution everybody, the regulations, the legality, all these things certainly don't ever move as fast as the technology tends to move, right? So I
Yeah.
think if you and I are probably old enough to remember when the internet was first released, there were, all these situations where everyone warned, you know, dark web and,
Yep.
chat rooms and, all this stuff. There was a curve associated with
Hmm.
us getting up to speed in terms of leveraging the technology, and there will be a similar curve, right? I think that's just the reality of where we are right now in this infancy, I would still say, with AI.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what questions are companies not asking that they should be asking? I know you talked a little bit about intentionality and
Yeah.
what's the purpose of it, but are there other questions that they should be asking once they determine, hey, I want to be intentional with this, here's a use case, et cetera, et cetera. What are there other questions that aren't being asked from your experience that should be?
Yeah, we like you said, we've talked about this, and I do really encourage people to ask those questions, not just should we be using it, but where should we be using it and why we
Yeah.
should be using it.
Hmm.
The other questions are really aligned to ensuring that there's going to be value added to the organization, right? So, what
Hmm.
are the success criteria? How do we measure ROI around this? Because
Hmm.
these first steps into AI are going to determine the culture and where your organization goes, whether they go really fast and really hard, or they take a more, slower approach, right? And
Yeah.
so you want to choose the use cases that are going to most align to your business objective, like we talked about, but that
Hmm.
have a clear ROI associated with it. People can start to demonstrate. The other questions people need to be asking are, with regards to these use cases, is do we
Hmm.
have the data and the ability to actually execute these use cases?
Hmm.
Those are some other questions because, again, garbage in, garbage out. If you're going to be
Yeah.
creating a chat bot, a virtual expert, if you will, do you have all your documentation that you want to feed this to
Hmm.
create, for lack of a better word, a custom GPT or a private GPT for your organization? Those
Yeah.
are all questions that I think start to lay the groundwork and start to ensure that you're laying the foundation for long-term success going forward with these technologies.
Would you say that it's also important for an organization to look internally to say, hey, do we have the infrastructure here to support this initiative?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we have the right people in the right place? So do we need to go hire or do we need to outsource or how do we need to do that?
Yeah. What I tend to encourage organizations is first to start again with the problem. Don't fall in love with the
Hmm.
solution, fall in love with the problem, right? What,
Yep.
what problem are you trying to solve?
Hmm.
Then start to identify potential use cases around that problem that, again, AI may or may not be the right solution. But if you
Yep.
identify AI is, then you run into the buy versus build question that everyone, occurs to. And so you start asking yourself again, do we have, to your point, the talent, the
Hmm.
infrastructure, the desire,
Yep.
and does it fit, again, back to the competitive advantage? Does it fit in our, wheelhouse? Is this something
Yeah.
we want to keep in house, or is it an opportunity for us to go partner with someone to go identify someone that this is their wheelhouse, this is their
Hmm.
expertise, and we should partner with them to bring them in house and offer opportunities for solutions.
I love it. I love it. Frank, this has been an amazing conversation, and I know we've covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. Um, anything else you just want to add to the conversation before we hit the speed round?
No, I think the only thing I would say is, again, you mentioned it. We've mentioned it many times before. I think
Yeah.
intentionality is something that people really need to be focused on. I would love to hear about situations that people are currently underway.
Yeah.
I would love to offer your audience a free strategy session with myself. If I could, Mark, I'll send you a link to include in the show notes. But yeah, if I can be of assistance, I'd be more than happy to help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're going to talk about how to get in contact with you here in just a
Sure.
moment. But are you ready for the speed round?
Yeah, yeah, ready to
Excellent,
go.
excellent. So, what first question for you? What fact about Frank would people be surprised to learn about you?
Um, So I talked about a little bit before around Stoicism. I also got into
Uh-huh.
meditation. And
Okay.
for the last almost 4.5 years, I have done daily meditation without a miss. Right. So,
Excellent.
whether that be, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but I've tried without missing yet for almost 4.5 years now, daily meditation.
That is awesome. Doing something, devoting or not devoting, but diving into something different,
Yeah.
and being able to do it for 4+ years, well, doing it for 20 days, or a couple weeks, let alone 4.5 years. I mean, that, hats off to you.
Thank you. Yeah,
You know,
it's certainly it helps me, right? It helps
yeah,
me kind of gain perspective. It helps me um, put perspective in my life for sure. And so as a result, I've decided to make it a daily part of my life.
awesome, awesome. So that kind of dovetails into the next question. All of us have stressful days.
Mm.
What's your go-to tactic for unwinding after a stressful day?
Yeah, it has to be grabbing the dogs, putting them on a leash, and my wife and I, let's go to the park and let's just walk around in nature, right, and get away for a
Yes.
little bit. Just turn off the cell phone and just walk the park for sure, and enjoy dogs and their sniffing and all that good stuff for sure.
And in this 105+ degree Texas heat, you have to be intentional with that.
Yeah, yeah, and those tend to happen early in the morning, very early in the
Yes.
morning, as a matter of fact, as opposed to later in the afternoon. So,
Yeah.
I prepare for the stress early on. How about that?
Excellent. I love it. I love it. That combined with the meditation, hats off to you.
Thanks.
So if you kind of mentioned this, if someone wants to pick your brain about the work you do, wants to get your insight or perspective, we're going to go ahead and put a link, in the show notes here. And definitely, when we post this on LinkedIn, I'll post that link for you as well,
Sure.
in the comments. But if someone wants to have a conversation with you,
Yeah.
what conferences or events are you going to be attending, or just generally learn more about AI strategies
Yeah,
from you?
I'm very
How can they get in
excited.
contact with you?
Yeah, Mark, I'm very excited. I'm going to be attending the ACCA, right? The Austin
Hey,
Contact Center Association or Alliance Symposium here in September to talk about AI. So I really hope that I get to see some folks in the audience. Certainly come up and say hi, and certainly ask me any questions you have. I'm also been asked to participate in a conference in October around reimagining sexuality and talking about the aspects of AI there.
okay.
And then I'm on several podcasts, including this one, of course. And I tend to share tips and tricks and strategies around these topics around AI, machine learning,
Hmm.
approaches organizations can use on LinkedIn. So I
Okay.
highly encourage you to, if interested, follow me, of course, and
Hmm.
connect with me, and feel free to DM me and say hi.
Excellent. And Frank, in the short time that we've known each other, I mean, you are probably one of the easiest people that, I've met to just have a conversation with, and I appreciate that about you.
Well,
And
thank you. It's a compliment. One of my, honestly, that was one of the best compliments someone can give me, right? Is, being able to share the things that I'm passionate about
Mhm.
But offering value around these things, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and I
Yep.
completely even understand why. But I think if people approach it with intentionality, approach it with, leveraging, as opposed to the shiny object, like, oh, it's a shiny object, I'm gonna go chase it. I think people will have
Yes.
longer term success, and don't have reason to be really intimidated by the technology.
It's a journey. It's not a
It
sprint,
really is.
you know. And I completely agree wholeheartedly with you on that. I mean, view it as a journey, and everybody's going to be doing this at some point in time, some flavor of it, and don't try. You don't have to be the first out of the gate. Just be the
No.
best out of the gate. You know.
Yeah, choose intentionally, and
Yep.
then focus your energy on that, and let uh the magazine managers focus on why are we not
Yes.
using this, or why are we not using that type thing. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. If anybody wants an intro with Frank, I'd be more than happy to go ahead and do that. Or as Frank said, he's all over LinkedIn. And when he says he'll connect with you, he means that. He will really connect with you. And Frank, thank you again for the generosity of your time. I really appreciate that. And look forward to more conversations. And your session that you're doing at ACCA, interestingly enough, it comes right before happy hour. So, you know, you can
we
have
can
it.
continue the conversation over drinks. Absolutely.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
exactly. All right. Well, Frank, thank you very much. If you like this
Mark, thank you
episode,
so much for
please.
having me. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience.
Oh, this has been awesome. This has been awesome. If you like this episode, please like, share, comment. Definitely share it. We're good with that. And again, if you want to go ahead and have a further conversation, a continued conversation with Frank, we can definitely make that happen as well. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the day.